Chosen one, God said. Watch this alone, no one else can hear it. What if there's a version of your story you've never told anyone, and tonight, for the first time, something is finally asking you to say it out loud, even if just to yourself? Is there a room in your life right now where you could be completely alone for 2 minutes? Somewhere with the door closed, somewhere nobody can walk in and interrupt what's about to happen inside you. If you have that room, go there now. Because what I'm about to say isn't meant for a crowd. It isn't meant for background noise while you're doing 5 other things. It's meant for the version of you that only shows up when nobody else is watching. The pain you're carrying right now. There's a version of you that only exists in private. The one who cries in the shower where the water covers the sound. The one who sits in the car for an extra few minutes before going inside, just to breathe without an audience. The one who scrolls through old photos at midnight, feeling things you'd never admit to anyone in daylight. You've built an entire public version of yourself. Capable, put together, fine. And it's not fake, exactly. It's just incomplete. Because underneath it, there's a private self carrying weight the public one never talks about. Have you been so busy managing what everyone else sees that you forgot to check in with what's actually happening underneath it? Why you learned to hide the real weight you carry somewhere along the way. You learned that showing the full weight of what you carry made people uncomfortable. Maybe someone changed the subject when you got too honest. Maybe someone told you that you were too much, or too sensitive, or that you needed to just get over it already. So you adapted. You learned to package your pain into something smaller, more digestible, easier for other people to handle. You got good at answering "I'm fine" so quickly it barely registers as a lie anymore. That adaptation kept you safe once. But it also means almost nobody in your life actually knows the full weight of what you're carrying right now. Who in your life would be genuinely surprised if they knew exactly how heavy things have felt for you lately? The thoughts you only have when nobody else can hear them. There are thoughts that only surface in complete privacy, late at night, early before anyone wakes up, in the quiet after everyone else has gone home. Thoughts about whether you're actually doing this life right, whether the choices you made were the right ones, whether you're becoming who you hoped you'd be, or drifting further from her or him with every passing year. Those private thoughts aren't intrusive or wrong. They're often the most honest thing about you. The parts that don't get filtered through what's socially acceptable to say out loud. What thought have you had recently that you've never said out loud to a single person? If that question just made something in you go quiet, stay with me, because the next few minutes are going to keep speaking directly to exactly that place. Why you feel more alone in a crowd than you do by yourself. Have you noticed that sometimes the loneliest moments aren't the ones spent alone, but the ones spent surrounded by people who don't actually know you? Laughing at a dinner table while feeling completely disconnected from everyone at it. Nodding along in conversations while your real thoughts are somewhere else entirely. That specific kind of loneliness, being surrounded and still unseen, cuts deeper than solitude ever could. It's not that you need more people around you. It's that you need at least one space where the mask can finally come off. Have you been more lonely in rooms full of people than you ever are when you're actually by yourself? The version of you that stopped asking for help at some point. You probably stopped asking for help the way you used to. Maybe you asked once and didn't get the response you needed. Maybe you watched someone else ask and get dismissed, and you quietly decided it wasn't worth the risk. So you became the person other people lean on, without ever really letting anyone lean back toward you. That's a heavy role to carry silently. Being the strong one doesn't mean you don't also need somewhere to set things down sometimes. When was the last time you actually let yourself need something from someone else, instead of handling it alone like always? Why you keep performing okay, even when you're not. Think about how often you say, "I'm good," without actually checking if that's true. It's become automatic, a social reflex more than an honest answer. Somewhere along the way, performing okay became easier than explaining what's actually going on. But performing okay for long enough starts to cost you something. It creates distance between you and the people who might actually want to know the real answer if you ever gave them the chance to hear it. What would happen if, just once, you answered honestly instead of automatically saying you're fine? If this is hitting somewhere real, subscribe now, because what comes next is going to help you understand exactly why you learned to hide this much in the first place. The moment you realized you had to become your own safe place, there was probably a moment, maybe more than one, where you realized nobody was coming to rescue you from what you were going through. No one was going to magically understand without you explaining. No one was going to fix it for you. You had to become the person who held yourself together, because waiting for someone else to do it wasn't working. That realization is painful, but it's also where real strength quietly begins. Becoming your own safe place doesn't mean you don't need others. It means you finally stopped outsourcing your own steadiness to people who couldn't consistently provide it. Can you remember the moment you realized you had to start holding yourself together on your own? Why the things you've never said out loud are still shaping you. The things you've never said out loud don't just disappear because you kept them quiet. They live somewhere in you, shaping how you react, what you're afraid of, who you trust and who you don't. Unspoken pain doesn't go dormant. It just goes underground, still influencing everything from a place you can't easily see. Saying something out loud, even just to yourself in a quiet room, starts to loosen its grip. It stops being an invisible weight and starts becoming something you can actually look at directly. What is something you've never said out loud that might still be quietly shaping how you move through your life? The perceptions you've been waiting for someone else to give you. You've been waiting, maybe without fully realizing it, for someone to give you permission. Permission to rest. Permission to say no. Permission to want something different than what you currently have. Permission to finally admit that you're struggling more than you've let on. That permission was never actually anyone else's to give. It was always yours. You've had it this entire time. Even in the seasons it felt completely out of reach. What permission have you been waiting for someone else to hand you that you're actually allowed to give yourself right now? If that landed somewhere honest, subscribe now, because the next section goes even deeper into what happens once you finally take that permission back. Why being seen in private matters more than being seen in public. Public recognition feels good, but it rarely touches the deepest parts of a person. Being seen in private, by yourself honestly, without performance, matters more than any applause a crowded room could ever offer. It's the difference between being known and simply being watched. Tonight, in this quiet moment, you have the chance to be seen by the only person who's actually been present for every single moment of your life: yourself. Can you offer yourself the same honest attention you'd want from someone who truly understood you? What changes when you finally stop hiding from yourself Something shifts the moment you stop hiding, even just from yourself. The exhausting effort of managing a performance finally eases. You start making decisions based on what's actually true for you, instead of what keeps up appearances. You start recognizing your own needs faster, instead of ignoring them until they become unbearable. This isn't about announcing everything to everyone. It's about no longer being a stranger to your own truth. That alone changes how you carry yourself through everything else. What might change in your life if you stopped hiding from yourself, even if nothing else around you changed yet? If tonight, in this quiet, private moment, something in you finally exhaled, that wasn't nothing. That was you. Being honest with yourself for the first time in a while, maybe longer than you realized. You don't have to carry the hidden version of yourself alone anymore. You don't have to keep performing okay until you actually believe you're allowed to not be. You are allowed to be fully known, starting with how honestly you're willing to see yourself. If you want to keep having moments like this one, real, honest, meant just for you, subscribe to this channel. This is a place for people who are done performing fine and ready to finally be known, starting with themselves. Nobody else needed to hear this tonight. Just you, and you heard it. I'll see you in the next one, chosen one. Watch this alone part 2, what you do. With what you now know last time, you sat with something you'd never said out loud. So let me ask you honestly, did you do anything with it? Or did it just quietly go back into hiding once the video ended? Is it easier to feel something in private than it is to actually carry it into your everyday life? Because that's usually where the real work begins. Not in the quiet moment of honesty, but in what you do the next morning, once the world is watching again. Close the door if you can. 2 more minutes. This time, we're not just naming what's hidden. We're talking about what happens after you finally see it clearly. The pain you're carrying right now, you felt something shift last time. A small exhale. A moment of being honest with yourself that felt almost foreign, like a language you used to speak fluently but had slowly forgotten. And then, probably, life came right back in. The next conversation, the next obligation. The mask went back on, not because you wanted it to, but because taking it off in private is so much easier than keeping it off once other people are around again. Have you noticed how quickly the old performance returns, even right after a moment of real honesty? Why honesty in private doesn't automatically become honesty in public? Being honest with yourself, alone, in a quiet room, is one kind of courage. Carrying that same honesty into a conversation with someone else is a completely different kind. It's normal for there to be a gap between the two. Most people can access private truth long before they're ready to speak it out loud to another person. That gap isn't failure. It's simply the next stage of the same process. You don't have to close it all at once. Where in your life is the biggest gap right now between what you know privately and what you're willing to say out loud? The first person you deserves your honesty. Isn't you think you might be waiting for the right person to finally open up to? A partner, a friend, a therapist, someone who will handle it perfectly. But before any of that, there's someone who deserves your honesty first, and it's not any of them. It's you. The daily, ongoing honesty of checking in with yourself, admitting when you're not okay before you're forced to, noticing your own needs before they become emergencies. That's the relationship the rest of your honesty gets built on top of. Have you been more honest with the people around you than you've actually been with yourself? If that question is sitting with you, subscribe now, because what's coming next is about closing that exact gap, one honest moment at a time. why speaking your truth feels riskier than it actually is. There's a fear that if you say the real thing out loud to another person, something will break. The relationship will change. They'll see you differently. Maybe they'll leave. That fear feels enormous in your head, often much bigger than what actually happens when you finally take the risk. Most people, when they finally speak an honest truth they'd been hiding, discover the moment was survivable. Uncomfortable, maybe, but survivable. The catastrophe they'd been imagining rarely matches the reality. What honest truth have you been avoiding? Because the imagined consequence feels bigger than it probably actually is. The difference between oversharing and actual honesty is sometimes people confuse honesty with dumping everything on everyone, all at once, regardless of the relationship or the moment. That's not the same thing. Real honesty is selective, intentional, and appropriately placed. It's choosing the right person, the right moment, and saying the true thing clearly, instead of either hiding it completely or spilling it everywhere without discernment. You don't have to tell everyone everything. You just have to stop telling the people who matter most nothing at all. Who in your life is actually safe enough to receive more honesty from you than they've been getting? Why? You've been protecting people from your own pain. Have you noticed a pattern of softening your struggles specifically to protect other people from worrying about you? Downplaying how bad things actually are because you don't want to burden them, or because you've convinced yourself they can't handle the real version. Sometimes that protection is genuine kindness, but sometimes it quietly robs people of the chance to actually show up for you because you never gave them anything real enough to respond to. Have you been protecting people from your pain in a way that's actually kept them from getting close enough to help you carry it? If that's landing somewhere honest, subscribe now, because the next part goes even deeper into what real support could actually look like for you. The moment someone surprises you with how well they handle the truth at some point. If you take the risk, someone is going to surprise you. You'll finally say the real thing, braced for rejection or discomfort, and instead they'll respond with more understanding than you expected. That moment tends to recalibrate something in you. Proof that not everyone reacts the way your fear has been predicting. You won't know who that person is until you actually give them something real to respond to. Keeping everyone at a safe, shallow distance guarantees you'll never find out. Is there someone in your life who might handle your truth far better than you're currently giving them credit for? Why repeated honesty builds something stronger than one big confession. You don't have to have one dramatic, all-or-nothing conversation where everything finally comes out at once. Real honesty tends to build gradually. Small true things, said consistently over time, slowly replacing the performance you've relied on for years. Each small honest moment is like a brick. One conversation doesn't build the whole wall, but enough of them, stacked over time, eventually build something solid enough to actually hold weight. What's one small honest thing you could say this week, instead of waiting for one perfect, complete confession? The fear that you'll be too much if you're fully honest somewhere along the way. Someone might have made you feel like your full self was too much to handle, too emotional, too intense, too complicated. That message sticks. It teaches people to shrink their honesty down to a size that feels more socially acceptable, even when it costs them being fully known. You are not too much. You were simply too much for people who weren't actually equipped to hold what you were carrying. That says something about their capacity, not about the size of your truth. Has someone ever made you feel like you were too much, when really they just weren't ready to meet you fully? Why becoming fully known changes how you experience everything else when you finally start becoming more fully known. To yourself first, and slowly to the people who've earned it. Something shifts in how you experience your entire life. Relationships feel less exhausting because you're not spending energy managing a performance inside them. Rest feels more restful because you're not holding a mask up, even in your quiet moments. Being known isn't just emotionally satisfying, it's practically lighter. It frees up energy you didn't even realize you were spending. What would feel lighter in your life if you were more fully known by the people closest to you? If you're ready to start experiencing that kind of lightness, subscribe now, because there's more here to help you keep building toward it. What you do next matters more than what you felt tonight. Everything you've felt across these two messages matters. But feeling isn't the finish line. What you actually do next, the small honest choice, the slightly more vulnerable conversation, the moment you let someone see a little more of the real you, that's where all of this actually becomes a different life instead of just a meaningful video. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to do it slightly more than you did yesterday. What is one small act of honesty you're going to carry into tomorrow? Because of what you've felt tonight. If this reached you the way the first one did, let it move you into action, not just emotion. Feeling understood matters, but living differently because of it matters more. You don't have to be fully known by everyone. You just have to stop being a stranger to yourself and start letting the right people a little closer than you have been. If you want to keep building toward that kind of honest, lighter life, subscribe to this channel. This is a place for people who are done hiding, even from themselves, and ready to finally be known. You heard this tonight for a reason. Go do something with it. I'll see you in the next one, Chosen One. Watch this alone, Part 3. The person you're becoming once no one's. Watching who are you when absolutely nobody is checking. Not your family, not your followers, not even the version of yourself you perform for on your best days. Have you ever caught yourself acting differently the second you thought you were unobserved? A little more honest, a little more relaxed, sometimes a little more sad than you'd ever let show in front of anyone. What if that version, the one that only shows up in complete privacy, is actually more you than the one everybody else gets? 2 more minutes. Alone, if you can manage it. Because today we're not just talking about hiding anymore. We're talking about who's actually left standing once all the performing finally stops. The pain you're carrying right now. You've spent 2 messages now learning to name what you hide, and slowly practicing what it means to let a little more of it show. And there's probably a quieter question underneath all of that, one you haven't said out loud yet. If I stopped performing entirely, would I even like who's left? That question is uncomfortable, but it's honest. Years of managing an image, meeting expectations, keeping everyone comfortable. It can make a person forget what their own preferences, opinions, and desires actually feel like underneath all that management. Have you lost touch with who you actually are, underneath who you've learned to perform for everyone else? Why you might not fully recognize yourself anymore if you've spent years prioritizing everyone else's comfort over your own honesty. It's possible you've drifted from a version of yourself you used to know better. Not because you did anything wrong, but because performance, sustained long enough, starts to feel like identity instead of just a mask you're wearing. This isn't cause for despair. It's simply information. You can't find your way back to something you refuse to admit you've lost. Naming the drift is the first step toward closing the distance. When was the last time you felt like you were fully yourself, without adjusting for anyone else in the room? The opinions you've stopped trusting because they weren't popular somewhere along the way. You might have learned to quietly abandon opinions that made other people uncomfortable. A preference here, a boundary there, slowly traded away in exchange for smoother relationships and less conflict. Each trade felt small in the moment. Together, they add up to a person who's forgotten what they actually think, your unpopular opinions, your inconvenient preferences, your boundaries that make other people slightly uncomfortable. Those aren't flaws to smooth over. They're pieces of the real you, waiting to be trusted again. What opinion or preference have you quietly abandoned, simply because it made things easier with someone else? If that question is landing somewhere real, subscribe now, because what comes next helps you start reclaiming exactly those pieces. Why rebuilding trust with yourself takes longer than you expect. If you've spent years overriding your own instincts to keep the peace, rebuilding trust with yourself won't happen overnight. It's similar to rebuilding trust with another person after a long stretch of broken promises. It takes consistent, small proof over time before it starts to feel real again. Be patient with the process. Every time you honor a small instinct, instead of dismissing it, you're making a deposit into a trust account that's been running low for a long time. What's one small instinct you could start honoring this week, just to begin rebuilding that trust? The person you were before you learned to perform. Think back, if you can, to a version of yourself before the performing started. Maybe a childhood memory, maybe just a distant sense of who you were, before you learned which parts of yourself made people uncomfortable. That person still exists, somewhere underneath everything you've built since then. You're not starting from zero. You're excavating something that already existed, buried under years of adapting to keep everyone else comfortable. What do you remember about who you were before you learned to shrink certain parts of yourself? Why choosing yourself will feel selfish before it feels right? The first few times you choose your own honesty over someone else's comfort, it's going to feel wrong. Selfish even if you've spent years training yourself to prioritize everyone else first. That discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something unfamiliar. Selfishness and self-respect get confused constantly, especially by people who benefited from your self-neglect. Learn to tell the difference, and don't let old guilt convince you that healthy boundaries are cruelty. Have you confused healthy self-respect with selfishness simply because it felt unfamiliar? If this is resonating, subscribe now, because what's ahead goes deeper into untangling exactly that confusion. The quiet grief of realizing how long you've been hiding. At some point in this process, grief tends to show up. Not dramatic grief, but a quiet, private sadness over how many years you spent managing everyone else's comfort instead of living as your full self. That grief is valid. You're allowed to mourn the version of your life you might have had if you'd trusted yourself sooner. But grief like this isn't meant to keep you stuck. It's meant to be felt, honored, and then used as fuel for exactly the change you're in the middle of making now. Can you let yourself grieve the years spent hiding without letting that grief convince you it's too late to change now? Why your full self will cost you some relationships, and that's okay as you become more fully yourself. Some relationships that depended on your performance are going to struggle to survive the transition. That's a hard truth, but an honest one. Some people liked the version of you that never pushed back, never needed anything, never took up too much space. Losing relationships that only worked because you were hiding isn't a tragedy. It's clarity, arriving exactly when you needed it, showing you which connections were ever built to hold the real you in the first place. Are you willing to let go of relationships that only worked because you weren't fully yourself inside them? The new kind connection waiting. On the other side, while some relationships may struggle, others are going to deepen in ways you didn't expect. When you show up more honestly, people who were only ever getting a fraction of you finally get access to the whole picture. Some of those connections will surprise you, growing stronger and more real than they've ever been. You can't experience that deeper kind of connection while still hiding most of yourself behind a performance. Full connection requires a full self showing up to receive it. Which relationship in your life might actually deepen once you stop hiding parts of yourself inside it? Why this process never fully finishes, and why that's good news. Becoming fully yourself isn't a project with a finish line. It's an ongoing practice, something you keep choosing again and again for the rest of your life. That might sound exhausting, but it's actually good news. It means you're never locked into who you were last year. You're always allowed to keep growing, keep becoming, keep discovering more of who you actually are. There's freedom in knowing this never fully finishes. It means there's no deadline you're failing to meet. There's just today's next honest choice waiting for you. Does it feel freeing or overwhelming, knowing this process never fully finishes? The person waiting for you on the other side of full, honest I swear ahead of you is a version of yourself who isn't managing a performance anymore, who trusts her own instincts or his own instincts without needing outside permission first, who has relationships built on being fully known instead of carefully curated. That person isn't a fantasy. She's already being built, quietly, through every small, honest choice you're making right now. You are closer to becoming that person than you probably realize. And every message in this journey has been one more step toward actually meeting them. What does the fully honest version of you, waiting on the other side of all this, actually look like to you? If you're ready to keep becoming that person, subscribe now, because the journey doesn't end here, and neither do you. If this reached you the way the others did, let it settle somewhere real. You are allowed to become someone your old performance never let you be. You are allowed to trust yourself again, one small, honest choice at a time. The person waiting on the other side of all this honesty isn't a stranger. It's simply more of you than you've let the world see in a long time. If you want to keep walking this journey toward being fully known, subscribe to this channel. This is a place for people who are done performing and finally ready to meet themselves completely. You're closer than you think. Keep going. I'll see you in the next one. Chosen One. Watch This Alone, Part 4. The version of you nobody's met. Yet what if the most honest version of you hasn't even been born yet? Not because you're incomplete, but because she's still being built, quietly, through everything you've been walking through. Have you ever imagined meeting your future self, the one who's finally fully known, fully honest, no longer performing for anyone? What would she say to you right now, in this exact moment, if she could? 2 more minutes alone if you can manage it. Because today isn't just about who you're becoming. It's about actually meeting her, even just for a moment, before life catches up. Pain you're carrying right now. You've spent 3 messages now. slowly peeling back layers of performance, honesty, grief, and rebuilding. And there's probably a tiredness underneath all of that progress, the exhaustion of doing deep inner work while still showing up for a life that doesn't pause to let you catch your breath. You're proud of how far you've come, but you're also tired. Tired of the ongoing effort, tired of catching yourself mid-performance and correcting course. Tired of doing this slow, invisible work while everyone around you assumes nothing has changed. Are you tired of doing deep work that nobody around you can actually see happening? Why invisible progress is still real progress? Just because your growth isn't visible to everyone around you doesn't mean it isn't happening. Some of the most significant changes in a person's life happen entirely internally, long before they show up in any external, observable way. The work is real, even when the results are still forming beneath the surface. You don't need external proof to validate what you already know is shifting inside you. Trust the invisible progress. It's building towards something that will eventually become undeniable. Can you trust the progress you can't yet see, reflected back to you by anyone else? The moment you stop measuring yourself against wow you used to be at some point, this journey stops being about comparing your current self to your old, hidden, performing self. That comparison served its purpose for a while, showing you how far you've come. But eventually, it becomes more useful to measure yourself against who you're actually becoming, rather than constantly looking backward at who you used to be. Growth measured only against your past can become its own kind of trap. At some point, you get to stop grading yourself on improvement and simply start living as the person you've already become. Are you still measuring yourself against your old self when you could be simply living as who you already are now? Why your future self isn't waiting for perfection to arrive. There's a tendency to imagine your future, fully honest self as some polished, perfected version, someone who never struggles, never masks anything, never slips back into old patterns. That version doesn't actually exist, and waiting to become her before you start living authentically means you'll wait forever. Your future self isn't perfect. She's simply more practiced at choosing honesty than you are right now. That's a difference of practice, not of flawlessness. Have you been waiting for a perfected version of yourself to arrive before allowing yourself to live authentically today? If that question is landing somewhere honest, subscribe now, because what's ahead helps you close that gap starting immediately, imperfections included. The conversation your future self would want you to have today if your future self, the fully honest one, could send you one message right now. It probably wouldn't be complicated. It would likely be simple. Stop waiting. Say the thing. Set the boundary. Rest without guilt. Trust the instinct you've been second-guessing. She already knows what happens on the other side of those choices, because she's already living there. Trust her perspective, even without having fully arrived at it yet yourself. If your future, fully honest self could speak to you today, what do you think she'd tell you to stop waiting on? Why you don't have to wait for crisis to keep growing so often. People only make real changes after everything falls apart. After burnout, after heartbreak, after some undeniable wake-up call forces their hand. But you don't have to wait for a crisis to keep choosing growth. You're already doing the work, proactively, without needing everything to collapse first. That's actually a rarer and more admirable kind of courage. Choosing change before you're forced into it, rather than after. Can you give yourself credit for choosing growth proactively, instead of waiting until everything falls apart first? the small daily practice that keeps building your future self-spam. Meeting your future, fully honest self isn't a one-time event. It's built through small daily practices, checking in with yourself honestly each morning, noticing when you're performing instead of being real, choosing rest instead of guilt one more time than yesterday. These small practices feel insignificant individually, but they're the exact bricks building the person you're becoming, one ordinary day at a time. What's one small daily practice you could commit to that would keep building toward your future, more honest self? If that resonates, subscribe now, because there's more practical encouragement waiting here to help you keep building. Why? Setbacks don't erase the progress you've already made. There will be days you slip back into old performance, old people-pleasing, old patterns of hiding. That's not proof that none of this worked. Setbacks are a normal part of growth, not evidence that growth never happened at all. Don't let one hard day convince you that months of quiet, real progress didn't count. Progress isn't a straight line, and a single step backward doesn't cancel out everything you've already built. Have you let a single setback convince you that all your previous progress didn't matter? The future self is already proud of you right now, somewhere ahead of you. Your future self isn't waiting impatiently for you to hurry up and arrive. She's already proud of you right now for doing work most people never even attempt. She knows exactly how hard this stage is, because she lived through it too, on her way to becoming who she is. You don't have to earn her pride through perfection. You already have it, simply by continuing to show up for this process at all. Can you accept that your future self is already proud of you, exactly as you are in this current, imperfect stage? Why becoming fully yourself is a gift to everyone around you too. It might feel like this entire journey is selfish, focused only on your own healing and honesty. But becoming fully yourself ripples outward. It gives the people around you permission to do the same. It models a kind of authenticity that's rare and quietly contagious. Your honesty isn't just changing your own life. It's showing everyone watching, even without words, that becoming fully known is possible for them too. Who in your life might be quietly inspired by watching you become more honestly yourself? Meeting her, even just for a moment. Right now, close your eyes for a second if you can. Picture her, the fully honest version of you, steady, unhidden, at peace with being fully known. She's not far away. She's not a fantasy. She's simply a little further down the path you're already walking. You've already met her, in glimpses, in the small, honest choices you've been making across this entire journey. Every time you chose truth over performance, you were her, even briefly. She's not waiting somewhere far ahead. She's already showing up, more and more, every time you choose her. What did it feel like, even for a brief moment, to imagine meeting her? If this reached you the way the others did, hold on to this. You don't have to wait years to meet your future self. You're already becoming her, one honest choice at a time, faster than you probably realize. She's proud of you. She's patient with you. And she's already closer than you think. If you want to keep walking toward her, subscribe to this channel. This is a prota people who are done waiting to become themselves, and finally ready to start meeting who they already are. One honest moment at a time. Keep going. She's waiting, and she's closer than ever. I'll see you in the next one, chosen one. Watch this alone. Part 5: The last time you'll need to hide. What if this is the last time you ever have to hide the real weight of what you're carrying? Not because life stops being hard, but because you finally stop facing it alone. Have you noticed, across this entire journey, that the hardest part was never actually the pain itself? It was carrying it in silence, convinced nobody would understand if you said it out loud. What if that silence is the one thing you're finally ready to let go of? Today, one last time, close the door, if you can. 2 minutes, alone. Because everything this journey has been building toward comes down to this final, simple truth. Their pain you're carrying right now, you've come a long way across 4 messages. You've named the hidden version of yourself, practiced honesty, grieved what performing cost you, and started meeting the fully honest self waiting ahead. And now, at the end of this journey, there might be one final fear left standing. What if I go back to hiding once this series is over? That fear is honest, and it deserves an honest answer, not empty reassurance. Because the truth is, you might slip back sometimes. Old patterns don't disappear just because you understand them now. But slipping back doesn't mean losing everything you've built. It just means you get to keep choosing, again, exactly like you've been doing this entire time. Are you afraid of losing everything you've built here, the moment this series comes to an end? Why this isn't the end of the work, just the end of this part of it. This is the final message in this specific journey, but it's not the end of becoming fully known. That work continues for the rest of your life. In ordinary moments nobody's filming, in choices nobody's applauding. This series simply gave that ongoing work a name, a structure, a place to start. You're not being left alone at a finish line. You're being sent forward with everything you need to keep walking, even without a new message arriving next week to remind you. Can you trust that you have what you need to keep walking this out, even without another message arriving to guide you? The hidden version of you doesn't disappear, but it stops running the show. The private, hidden version of yourself that this whole journey started with, she doesn't vanish completely. Everyone still has private thoughts, private struggles, moments they wouldn't broadcast to a crowd. That's normal. What's changed is that version no longer runs your entire life from the shadows, unspoken and unexamined. You get to keep some things private without keeping everything hidden. That's not backsliding. That's simply healthy discernment. Something very different from the fear-based hiding you started this journey trying to understand. Can you tell the difference now between healthy privacy and fear-based hiding in a way you maybe couldn't before? Why you don't need a perfect track record to call this growth. You don't need to have gotten everything right across these last 4 messages to call this real growth. Some days you probably still performed. Some conversations probably still felt too risky for full honesty. That doesn't disqualify the progress. Growth was never about a perfect track record. It was about a different overall direction than where you started. Look at the direction, not just the individual days. That's where the real evidence of change actually lives. If you looked at the overall direction of your life instead of individual imperfect days, what would you notice has actually shifted? If that question means something to you, subscribe now, because even after this series ends, there's more here to keep encouraging that direction forward. The specific moment you'll know this work is starting to stick there will be a specific moment, sometime after this series ends, where you'll notice this work has actually started sticking. It might be a moment you choose honesty automatically, without even consciously deciding to. A boundary you set without the usual guilt attached. A private truth you finally say out loud, almost without thinking twice. That moment will feel small when it happens, but it will be enormous. Proof that everything felt across this journey has actually become part of how you live now, not just how you think. What do you imagine that specific moment might look like for you? Once this work truly starts sticking, why the people who truly love you want the honest version more somewhere in the back of your mind. There might still be a fear that the honest, fully known version of you is less lovable than the performed one. That fear rarely holds up under real testing. The people who genuinely love you don't want your performance. They want you, the full, complicated, honest version that this journey has been slowly uncovering. Trust that the love built on your honest self will always be sturdier than love built on a performance you have to maintain forever. Can you trust that the people who truly love you actually want the honest version of you more than the performed one? The quiet courage of continuing without an audience once this series ends. Nobody's going to be checking in to see if you kept your honesty going. There's no audience for the next chapter of this work. Just you, quietly choosing, over and over, without applause or witnesses. That kind of quiet, unwitnessed courage is actually the most real kind there is. It's not performed for anyone. It's simply chosen, again and again, because you've decided it matters, whether or not anyone else ever sees it. Are you willing to keep choosing this honesty, even without an audience to witness the choice? If that kind of quiet courage speaks to you, subscribe now, because even without a live audience, this space will still be here whenever you need to come back. Why you're delighted to celebrate how far you've already come before looking any further ahead. Take a moment to actually celebrate what's already happened across this journey. You named things you'd never said out loud. You practiced honesty in small, real ways. You grieved years of hiding, and you kept going anyway. That's not small. That deserves acknowledgement, not just quiet dismissal on your way to the next goal. Growth-focused people often forget to pause and actually celebrate progress, always rushing toward the next thing to improve. Don't skip this part. You've earned it. Can you take a genuine moment right now to acknowledge how far you've already come, instead of rushing straight to what's next? The message you can return to, even after this series ends. This is the final message in this specific series, but nothing about it disappears once it's over. You can return to any of these messages whenever you need reminding, when old patterns creep back, when hiding starts to feel easier again, when you need someone to speak directly into exactly what you're carrying. Healing isn't a straight line, and needing to revisit something isn't a step backward. It's simply how real, sustainable growth actually works for most people. Will you allow yourself to return to these messages whenever you need reminding, without judging yourself for needing to? Why, what you do next is the real ending of this story. The real ending of this journey isn't this video. It's what happens next in your actual life, long after this message finishes playing. It's the honest conversation you finally have, the boundary you finally hold, the private truth you finally trust yourself enough to speak out loud. This message can only take you to the edge. What you do next is the part that actually writes the ending to this specific chapter of your story. What's the very next honest step you're going to take once this message ends? The last time you have to hide the weight you're carrying here, at the end of this journey, is the truth this entire series has been building toward. You don't have to hide the weight you're carrying anymore. Not from yourself, and increasingly, not from the people who've actually earned the chance to help you carry it. That hiding, that performance, that exhausting management of everyone else's comfort, it doesn't have to define the next chapter of your life the way it defined the last one. This can be the last time you carry something this heavy in complete silence. Not because life gets easier, but because you finally stop facing it alone. Are you ready for this to be the last time you carry something this heavy without letting anyone else help? If this journey reached you the way it was meant to, carry it forward, not as something you remember, but as something you actually live. You are known now, starting with yourself, and increasingly, with the people who deserve to know the real you. This is the end of this specific series. But for you, it's simply the beginning of a life you no longer have to hide from. If you want to keep growing alongside messages like these, subscribe to this channel. This is a place for people who are done hiding and finally ready to be fully, completely known. You made it through this entire journey. That says everything about who you already are. I'll see you in the next one.